Hey guys, welcome to the Daily Word Bible Study, a plain and simple, book by book, chapter by chapter, verse by verse study through the entire Bible. We are currently in the book of Esther, chapter 2. The setup was Queen Vashti, a very beautiful woman, queen, defied the command of King Ahasuerus. And again, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this name right. These are Persian names here, by the way. And I'm just thinking about this too, just of note when we talk about the Persian. Think about the area too of the kind of people that we're dealing with. Just a side note. But he threw this big bash to showcase and really brag, okay, about all of his greatness. And then he decided he's going to show off his woman, his queen. And she is like, I ain't hearing that. That cost her her spot. So he did this also through a what was one of their edicts. I think it's a very foolish law, where once the king decrees something, and they write it down as a law, it cannot be revoked. And that's just the foolishness of men, because why would you bind yourself to that? Now, there are people who do that for other motives. For example, in the case of, like in Daniel, this same law was used to say that they got the king to say, if any man pray to any other god for the next 30 days, he's going to be thrown to the lions. Now, the people who urged the king to do that, their motive was hatred and jealousy against Daniel. That was their motive. The king regretted that. Now, in this case, it's the same thing. This kind of harsh thing right here. The men who urged the king to do that, their motive was so that, hey, every man can be the man of his house. Okay? All right. So chapter 2 says, sometime later, when King Ahasuerus' rage had cooled down, and this is why you shouldn't have that. Notice this: when his rage had cooled down. On a sidebar, you should always let your rage cool down before you employ actions. Road rage is up. That's just a public service information. Road rage is up because people react and respond knee-jerk to their anger. All right, I digress. Sometime later, when King Ahasuerus' rage had cooled down, he remembered Vashti, what she had done, and what what was decided against her. He kind of regretted, but he couldn't change it. So what is kind of interesting itself, that even the king himself cannot change it, and that's going to be very interesting later on in this story. Verse 2, the king's personal attendants suggested, let a search be made for a beautiful young woman for the king. Let the king appoint commissioners in each province of his kingdom, so that they may assemble all the beautiful young women to the harem at the fortress of Susa. Put them under the care of Hegai, the king's eunuch, who is in charge of the women, and give them the required beauty treatments. So again, even far back then, it was always about beauty, right? Makeup was good and all of that kind of stuff too. The makeup just wasn't profitable in that respect. But verse 4, then the young woman who pleases the king will become queen instead of Vashti. This suggestion pleased the king, and he did accordingly. So they're going to start this search for a new king. And it says, in the fortress of Susa, there was a Jewish man named Mordecai, son of Jair, son of Shimi, son of Kish, a Benjamite. Now, what is interesting, we saw a Mordecai in the name mentioned in Nehemiah. We don't know if this was the same Mordecai. It could go either way for me. Probably more so it wasn't because of where he's living at. Verse 6, he had been taken into exile from Jerusalem with other captives when King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon took King Jeconiah of Judah into exile. So Mordecai is up in age. So depending on how old he was, remember he's been out. Now there's another way of looking at this too, that the exile, the deportation happened over time. So that he could have been taken at the beginning, 10-year mark, 20-year mark, like that. At any rate, he's up in age. Verse 7, Mordecai was the legal guardian of his cousin Hadassah, that is Esther. So now we see this name Hadassah. Very interesting name, right? Hadassah. That's her Jewish name. So this is because, Mordecai was the legal guardian of his cousin Hadassah, that is Esther, because she didn't have a father or mother. And the young woman had a beautiful figure and was extremely good looking. When her father and mother died, Mordecai had adopted her as his own daughter. So we see a lot of these kind of examples today. But Mordecai, again, he kind of looked after her. But also she was taken with him in the exile at some point. Verse 8, when the king's command and edict became public knowledge, many young women gathered at the fortress of Susha under Hegai's care. Esther was also taken to the place and placed under the care of Hegai, who was in charge of the women. The young woman pleased him and gained his favor, so that he accelerated the process of the beauty treatments and the special diet that she received. He assigned 7 handpicked female servants to her from the palace and transferred her and the servants to the harem's best quarters. So he looked at her, and I'm going to explain to him later, it's going to come out, that it wasn't just her looks. Okay? Verse 10, Esther did not reveal her ethnic background or her birthplace because Mordecai had ordered her not to. Every day Mordecai took a walk in front of the harem courtyard to learn how Esther was doing and to see what was happening to her. During the year before each young woman's turn to go to King Ahasuerus, the harem regulation required her to receive beauty treatments with oil of myrrh for 6 months, and then with perfumes and cosmetics for another 6 months. And when the young women would go to the king, she was given whatever she requested to take with her from the harem to the palace. She would go in the evening, and in the morning she would return to a second harem under the supervision of Shashgag, the king's eunuch in charge of the concubines. And she never went to the king again unless he desired her and summoned her by name. This kind of sounds like The Bachelor, huh? But of course, this was the way before The Bachelor. In other words, the king had a lot of beautiful women to choose from. Now, this is interesting because then who would he choose then? Now, think about this. Who would he choose? Now, think about this, because all of them were beautiful. All of the women were beautiful. So which one would he choose? Now, that's interesting because he could choose one and be like, all right. Verse 15. Esther was the daughter of Abihail and the uncle of Mordecai, who had adopted her as his own daughter. And when her turn came to go to the king, she did not ask for anything except what Haggai, the king, trusted official in charge of the harem, suggested. Esther won approval in the sight of everyone who saw her. She was taken to King Ahasuerus in the royal palace in the 10th month, in the month of Tobeth, in the 7th year of his reign. So remember, these processes took about a year. For some reason, they thought this beauty enhancement would work. And Esther only took the minimum. She didn't even really ask for anything, right? Just, okay, whatever you give me. Verse 17, the king loved Esther more than all the other women. She won more favor and approval from him than did any of the other young women, and he placed the royal crown on her head and made her queen in place of Vashti. So then she far exceeds even Vashti's beauty. Verse 18, the king held a great banquet for all his officials and staff. It was Esther's banquet. He freed his providence from tax payments and gave gifts worthy of the king's bounty. When the young women were assembled together for a second time, Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate. Esther still had not revealed her birthplace or her ethnic background, as Mordecai has directed. She obeyed Mordecai's order, and she always had while he raised her. So now she becomes king. Now, let me just say this too, because there was something about Hadassah that was more than, okay, just her looks. It was her looks. Her character. Her character. It's what, when the king looked at her, that's what grabbed her. Some of you people are looking for a wife, and you say, and vice versa. Okay, I'm gonna put this vice versa. How do you choose a good wife or a good husband? Character. I'm gonna go a step further. Godly character. Okay. Verse 21, during those days while Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate, Bigthan and Teresh, two eunuchs who guarded the king's entrance, became infuriated and planned to assassinate King Ahasuerus. When Mordecai learned of the plot, he reported it to Queen Esther, and she told the king on Mordecai's behalf. And when the report was investigated and verified, both men were hanged at the gallows. This event was recorded in the historical records in the king's presence. Now, this is going to be become important to the narrative, okay, later on. Now, verse 3. After all this took place, King Ahasuerus honored Haman, the son of the Hamatharite, the Agagite. He promoted him in ranks and gave him a higher position than all the other officials. The entire royal staff at the king's gate bowed down and paid homage to Haman, because the king had commanded this to be done for him. But Mordecai would not bow down or pay homage. Now, this becomes one of the most interesting stories here. So here's a man, an evil man, who gains power. Now watch what happens, because the pride and arrogance in this man becomes his downfall. It also becomes interesting because, remember, Mordecai is guardian to the queen, whom the king loves dearly. I mean, the king was into Esther, right? Out of all of the women, Esther really, he had the full package. Looks, and he also a beautiful character. Verse 3. Members of the royal staff and the king's gate asked Mordecai, why are you disobeying the king's command? And when they had warned him day after day, he still would not listen to them. They told Haman to see if Mordecai's actions would be tolerated, since he had told them he was a Jew. Okay, now why is this going to be important that he's a Jew versus he's just disobeying, right? Verse 5. When Haman saw that Mordecai was not bowing down or paying him homage, he was filled with rage. Okay. And when he learned of Mordecai's ethnicity, Haman decided not to do away with Mordecai alone. He planned to destroy all of Mordecai's people, the Jews, throughout Ahasuerus' kingdom. Why this evil plot? Right? And just stop for a moment here. Mordecai pisses you off. Now, why are you seeking to destroy all of the Jews? Now, spiritually, I'm going to say Satan is behind this, without a doubt. Satan is the one behind this. Logically, though, how is Haman processing this to say, this man is not bowing? And by the way, keep this in mind, all the other Jews were bowing. See, everybody else was bowing except Mordecai. So why is he even destroying the Jews who were bowing? The hatred now in this man is unbelievable. Verse 7. The first month, the month of Nicaea, the king, Ahasuerus' 12th year, that is, lot, was cast before Haman for each day in the month, and it fell on the 12th month, the month of Adar. Then Haman informed King Ahasuerus, there is one ethnic group scattered throughout the peoples in every province of your kingdom, yet living in isolation. Their laws are different from everyone else, and they do not obey the king's laws. It is not the king's best interest to tolerate them. Now, remember this. When you start with Darius, the king of the Medes and the Persians, how God gave them favor through him. In other words, this favor came from God through Darius. Now you see Haman trying to destroy them, and again, the evil of trying to destroy an entire nation because one man did not pay you homage. Secondly, he's lying because the Jews were obeying. Even Mordecai was obeying, but this plot gets good. Okay, so verse 9, if the king approves, let an order be drawn up authorizing their destruction, and I will pay 375 tons of silver to the accountants for a deposit in the royal treasury. The king removed the signet ring from his finger and gave it to Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the enemy of the Jewish people. So now this is what he is, right? The enemy of the Jewish people. Then the king told Haman, the money and the people are given to you to do as you see fit. The royal scribes were summoned on the 13th day of the first month, and the order was written exactly as Haman commanded. It was intended for the royal satraps, the governors, each of the province, and the officials of each ethnic group, and written for each province in its own script, and to each ethnic group in its own language. It was written in the name of the king, Ahasuerus, and sealed with the royal signet ring, meaning that this cannot be changed. Verse 13, the letters were sent by couriers to each of the royal provinces, telling the officials to destroy, kill, and annihilate all the Jewish people, young, old, women, and children, and plunder their possessions on a single day. 13th day of Adar in the 12th month. A copy of the text issued as law throughout every province was distributed to all the peoples. Now you also get a sense of the vastness of, again, when we talk about these world dominating kingdoms. In other words, he's talking about destroying the Jews all over the world. He's talking about annihilating the entire Jewish race. Now, of course, ultimately, that would mean destroying Jesus. So that's why we say we know that this was Satan, right? That is doing this. Verse 14, copy of the text issued as law throughout every province, but distributed to all peoples so that they might get ready for that day. The couriers left, spurred by the royal command, and the law was issued in the fortress of Susa. The king and Haman sat down to drink while the city of Susa was in confusion. They sit up there drinking while everybody's like, we're going to die. Now again, a lot of things here about this that's just wrong, meaning the king himself. Why would the king even issue that though? Now he's issuing that based upon a man, but again, why would he go, Haman, why are you doing that, right? What the heck, right? More on this in the next chapter. We're going to get into this. We'll pick it up in chapter 3, guys. Don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to BP, the Bible Perspective. As always, if you have a thought or comment, add it to the comment section below. All comments are welcome. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. See you in chapter 3.